Good morning. This meeting of the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission will now come to order. The time is 9:20. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our apologies for starting late today. We were hoping to stream the meeting over the web, which we've been doing for all of our meetings, but unfortunately we don't have the bandwidth this morning in this particular arrangement of this hotel. So the meeting is being recorded and it will be posted onto our website. I'm not sure when, but Buck will ensure that that gets up there as soon as possible once the meeting's been recorded and he can upload it to our website. So apologies for that. Let's go ahead and start with roll call. Vice Chair Freeman.
Here.
Vice Chair Herrera.
Here.
Commissioner McNulty. Here. Commissioner Sturts.
Here.
We have a quorum. Other folks around the room today are our legal counsel, Mary O'Grady and Joe Canefield. We have our mapping consultant, Willie Desmond, a court reporter, Marty Herder. So when anyone comes up to speak at the microphone, please be mindful of Marty and make sure to spell your name so that we get an accurate spelling for the record. Buck Forst is our Chief Technology Officer, and Christina Gomez is our Deputy Executive Director. So those are the folks around the room today. Next item on the agenda, oh, and let me just say one more housekeeping item. We're going to go till 11 a.m. and have a recess for about 20 minutes to a half hour, and then we'll come back and continue the meeting at that point. Next item on the agenda is agenda item 2, map presentations. I don't know if any members of the public brought maps today to present to us, but this is a recurring agenda item from now until we get the draft maps published, and is the opportunity for folks to let us know if they have any maps. So I don't have any, I have some request to speak forms, but none of them seem to be regarding maps. So I'm just checking to make sure. Okay, no maps today. So we'll go to agenda item 3, review, discussion, and direction to mapping consultant regarding ideas for possible adjustments to congressional grid map based on constitutional criteria. So I'm sure Willie had a productive weekend working hard on all the instructions we gave him on Friday. And I will turn that over to you.
Okay. We have 2 congressional and 2 legislative maps to present today. As the criteria become more and more detailed, it does take longer to produce these because you're weighing various factors with each change. So we're not able to have them at the same pace we were when it was things such as don't split Indian reservations or try to get minority districts. Buck, could I ask you, is it possible to turn off some of the lights over the projector to make it a little easier for people to see? So the 2 congressional maps we have today were changes to the river district and a combination of the latest river district and the 3 border district. So is there one of those you'd prefer to start with? Okay, so I guess we'll just start with the river district then.
Sounds good.
Okay. So just to go over the criteria for this river district, and I should note that the files that are going to be available online, I guess right when this stream will be available online too, there is a new file included in there that is the criteria. So it's just a brief description of what criteria were used to change this map. This particular map was changed to include South Scottsdale into proposed District 6. To remove East Mesa from District 6. To combine Fort McDowell and the Salt River reservations with Congressional District 6 to make Congressional District 5 more rural so that it goes into Pinal County. Congressional District 3 should get the arm of Congressional District 5. That was the Fountain Hills area. And to move Pinal and Pima counties into District 5 from District 3, not including the Santan Valley and the Queen Creek. So, yes. Also to move Pinal and Pima into Congressional District 5 from Congressional District 3, or proposed District 5 from proposed District 3. And the last criteria was to make the districts more competitive where available.
Would it be possible when we get these maps to have those criteria as a separate page?
Yes, I will add that criteria page to the maps for Wednesday.
Thank you.
Yes. Are there, I believe this was requests, Commissioner Herrera and Commissioner McNulty had asked, do you guys have specific areas you'd like to delve into right away? I should also mention that I started with Congressional District, River District 4 here instead of 5. 5 had some changes to 7 to make it go to the 202, and I wasn't sure if that was how you had wanted it, so I left this as version 6A. If that is what you want, indeed, I'll make another map for Wednesday that is based off of 5. I did make the changes to include the Arcadia area, though, part of this one. So, all right, are there?
Mr. Desmond, can you go into, let's see, Congressional District 6? Let's take a look at that.
Okay. Are there areas you'd like me to look at right away?
No, if you can just zoom into it, I'd like to see what the boundaries.
Okay. All right, starting at the north, one of the changes was to include Fort McDowell and Salt River with it. So those are the northernmost points. Going down south a little bit, you asked me to include South Scottsdale, which is this area right here, and also Arcadia, which is this area right here. The northern boundaries of both of those is Camelback Road. Let me move my mic over. So that when I turn, you can still hear me. It includes all of Tempe, West Mesa, as you had asked for. I removed all of East Mesa from it this time. And then it goes down into, it also includes Ahwatukee right here, which was from an earlier iteration, parts of Chandler, and then continuing down has Blackwater, Santan Flats Village, and all of the Gila River, Arizona reservation areas. I think we were also able to make it more competitive using just that proxy of 2008, 2010 as a judge in this latest iteration. It is about a 7% difference between Democratic average statewide percent and Republican average statewide percent from those two elections.
And Mr. Desmond, just can since you're talking about competitiveness, I see that there's, on this version of River District, there are, let's see, so District 3 is solidly Republican, District 4 is solidly Republican, District 8 is solidly Republican, and I guess so is 9, is that correct?
9 is, depending on your definition,
I mean,
is more Republican. I wouldn't necessarily say it's solidly.
15% difference is not solidly Republican?
It depends what criteria you're
Okay,
using.
sure.
We don't have like a hard
No,
line
and I
here.
know that we don't have a definition, but I guess I was just getting at that, then we have District 1 that leans Republican, District 5 that leans Republican, District 6 that leans Republican, with their, I think they're all under 7% differential, so I just wanted to make a note of that. Can you look at 3 as well?
Sure. Okay, so district number 3 now includes Santan Valley and part of Queen Creek that is in Pinal County, and the rest of, and then the rest of it is contained in Maricopa, except for a small part that goes into Apache Junction. It includes all of East Mesa, a sizable portion of Gilbert and Chandler also. Are there specific areas you wanted me to go into a little bit further, or changes you'd like to see to this one?
I may have some changes. I just want to see if anybody else wants to make any comments on this particular version of the map, River District, before I make my changes.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Freeman?
Mr. Desmond, just point of clarification, looking at the splits report, have the columns shifted over? Am I reading it right that there are 5 split counties, 25 split census places? Do those columns just need to be shifted over?
Yes, that just looks like a formatting issue.
Okay. Perfect.
And it's actually 8 split counties. There's 5 that are only split into 2 districts, and then 3 that are split into more
Gotcha.
than 2.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I don't have anything on this map today. I'll need to study it. I spent most of the weekend looking at legislative maps.
Mr. Desmond?
Yes?
So can you zoom in on District 6 again? Thank you. In particular, that arm that we were talking about that includes Arcadia.
Okay. Would you like the pointer?
Yeah, yeah, the pointer would be great. I don't want to get up and have my big head blocking. What I'd like to see, so this is the arm that we had created, and I'd like to see if I can fill in this arm.
Okay.
I'm gonna take some notes. I was driving around this area over the weekend. So I live around here. The road, the Thomas Road. I think Thomas Road is the southern bound. It's the southern border, correct?
Yes.
I like to fill in. If I can fill it in here, I think this is Camelback.
That is Camelback.
And what I like to do is fill it in all the way over here until you reach the one. I think it's this is the. Is there an Indian reservation here?
No.
all the way to the right.
Yeah, that. Where's the Indian Reservation on this map? Can you
If you look to the farther right-hand side, you see the Salt River is the diagonal lines.
okay, this right here?
Oh, to the
No,
right.
all the way to the right, past Scottsdale.
Keep going.
Right
There,
here?
right.
Yep.
That hatch line.
Okay.
So the reason I didn't just extend that line is there is a fair amount of population. You had asked for the Arcadia area, and I believe the boundaries of that were 48th Street, Thomas Road, Camelback, and then
40th Street.
40th Street, yes.
Over to 56.
Yes, and so the far right vertical line is 56th Street.
So this is still part of 6. This is all 6.
That's all 6, yes. And then you also
Here's
asked
the
to
reservation
include
right here.
Southern Scottsdale, and you asked that just for now we use Camelback Road as the. So I took those 2 areas and put them both, and then dipped kind of back down to include all of Scottsdale, and that's where the 2 met.
Can we do this? Can we take Camelback Road all the way to the
Yeah.
the Salt River?
Yeah, and the Salt River is included in this district. If I zoom out, you'll be able to see that a little
Okay.
clearer. Does that make it a little easier if I slide this? And then it does include Tempe and then those parts of West Mesa to Mesa Drive. That's where that dividing line was done. So, but the first change would be just to use Camelback all the way across to link the Arcadia and Southern Scottsdale areas.
Well, what I'd like to do in addition to that is take up, or see if I can take up all of Paradise Valley. This is a precinct, correct?
That is a census place.
A census place, which is, you know the name of it?
That one is Paradise Valley. That white area, no, that is an unincorporated area.
Is it an unincorporated area?
Yeah. So the purplish shaded area is Paradise Valley. All of the kind of green, olive green on the left-hand side is all Phoenix. And again, Phoenix isn't broken up into the neighborhoods. So Ahwatukee is not identified. Arcadia is not identified.
Correct. I didn't expect them to be. Wait, let me think about that one. Yeah, but let me. What road is this? This is in Mesa. What
That's
road?
Mesa Drive.
Can you move it further down to Stapley? The reason I'm doing this is that I think there's a big difference between East and West Mesa, and I think the people of Mesa would agree that this part of Mesa up to Stapley is probably the more conservative part.
Okay.
And the western part of Mesa, which probably would approach Stapley, would be, that community of interest probably has more in common with Tempe than it would with East Mesa. So that's definitely a change I want to make.
Okay. If it's informative, I mean, I could shade this by that average Republican or average Democratic percent, and you'd be able to see right now.
You want to do that?
If that's what you're looking for, is a dividing line that is focusing on competitiveness.
Sure. I understand that District 3 will get substantial population because it's pretty dense, that area, so. Sure. And I understand that area will be pretty dense in population, so we'll get population from somewhere else, but for right now, if you can move the line. Okay.
as it, just turn. As it's currently drawn, if you can read that at all, it's, I guess the more blue and green it is, the less the average Republican percentage. The more yellow and red, the more Republican it is. And that is by census block group. So it's very possible that individual blocks would have a much greater variation. But so I guess you're asking to move it further to the west to stately. Let me just zoom in.
So am I reading the map wrong then? The area doesn't appear that conservative?
The areas to the right of the line do appear to be more conservative.
Okay.
Do you know if that boundary is east or west of 101?
It is, I think it's west of the 101, yeah.
Okay.
And right now, I think the boundary we mentioned was Mesa Drive.
Yes.
So we would have to go further west, and that would be Stapley. I think Stapley's the next street over, next major street over. Right?
Let me go back then.
No. What's west of Mesa Drive?
So this black line again is Mesa Drive. The next
Right.
major street over looks like it's Center Street.
No, the next one should be Stapley. The next major one. Center is not. Oh. The Stapley is east of Country Club. Between Country Club, Stapley falls between Country Club and Mesa Drive.
Okay. Well,
That's fine. I mean,
I'm not seeing it yet, but I'll look for it. Mesa. Using the census block. So
they see University Drive.
this is Alma School.
Alma School, and that is Stapley is west of, east of Alma School.
Is it possible that 87 is actually Stapley?
No, that is Country Club because that turns into the Beeline Highway.
Okay.
Well, so does Gilbert, I think.
Oh well, if you want, we can keep looking for it. Otherwise, I can.
No, that's fine. We can.
Oh, I just turned the streets off.
That's fine. We can do that as homework, I guess.
Okay.
So that's moving 6 to 3.
Okay.
And what I'd like to do is so for 3, I think I don't want to make any changes yet. I think that's the only change I want to make for 3. But I want to go back to 6.
Okay.
In particular, that arm that we were focusing on a little earlier.
Right here.
Can you show me the 51?
Excuse me.
The 51? Right by, I think it's right by Paradise Valley.
So the 51 is right here.
What's over here? What is this area right there?
I believe that's all Phoenix. I can,
Yeah, if you can zoom in.
let me turn the census place. I think this makes it a little easier to see. So when they're all shaded differently, all the different census places. I'll turn off the individual streets so you.
Sure.
You'll have then as the main highways and stuff.
And these are the precincts, correct?
Those are, yes, those are the individual census places. So those are statewide.
Correct, statewide. Is there a voting precinct by the name of Joshua over here?
Possibly. Let me go in and turn on the, I'll have to add that layer. Just one second. Yes, so that white area is Joshua.
Now, is Joshua part of Paradise Valley?
No,
Is that considered part of Paradise
it's
Valley?
an unincorporated area.
Okay.
So it's the county of Maricopa.
Oh, it's part of- What I'd like to do anyway, even though I, go back to the arm real quick.
And so now these labels are all the different names of the precincts.
What I'd like to do is for District 6 to take up all of Paradise Valley.
Okay?
And let's include everything of Scottsdale up to Cactus. Up to Cactus Road. I guess I'm looking at south of Cactus as the downtown area, so I want to keep, so I really do think that the downtown area of Scottsdale, Arcadia, Paradise Valley, Tempe, would consider them a community of interest in keeping them together.
Okay, and you want to keep the, let me, so you're removing some of East Mesa, which will
I'm
allow
removing.
us, allow us to add some population to the district.
Correct.
If I do have to cut more, is there another area that makes sense?
What do you mean?
Like, if for instance, we don't have, adding all of Paradise Valley and all of Scottsdale up to Cactus, if that creates too large of a district and I need to remove some population, are the areas of Gilbert or Chandler or Ahwatukee or another place from District 6 a good place to take that population from?
Probably the areas from Gilbert.
Okay. I'll if I have to, that's where I will.
So that's District 6 and District 3. And what I'd like to do is move to District 7. I'd like to put this district back to the lines that were recommended by the Arizona Hispanic Coalition for Good Governing. I think I'm saying it correctly.
Okay. I believe in this version
Is it exactly the same?
it's not exact, but it's a little closer.
Can we go back to their lines?
Okay.
And you'll have to make up population, obviously, because we pulled up some population. So if you can get population from District 8, from District 4, and District 4 from 3.
Okay.
And if you can just do whatever makes sense. I mean, nothing specific.
Okay.
But I'd like to, I think Ms. McNulty, Commissioner McNulty said keeping the 9 within the 101. Still doing that.
Okay.
So not going over that.
Okay.
So I guess you can only go southwest, is that correct? On 9 to pick up population?
Yes, pretty much. And 9 does, with earlier changes, does go up pretty far now. When we moved District 6 up, that took out a lot of its population, so now it goes out
But-
into,
But it's staying within the 101 though, correct?
at this point, it does not,
It is not.
no.
Can we keep the 9, as Commissioner McNulty had mentioned, I think she had mentioned that last time, keeping it within the 101, and then going to pick up, to pick up population going southwest? And the reason I say, District 9 is pretty well established, and I consider that a community of interest, and we want to keep the urban sprawl away from District 9.
Okay.
And just to give you some ideas, District 4 should not be in Mesa, since it's a rural district. So we want to keep District 4 as rural as possible and have no urban area like Mesa in District 4.
Okay, let me look at that real quick. I don't believe District 4 goes into Mesa much.
No, and I want to make sure that doesn't happen.
Okay.
When you're trying to grab population, I want to keep District 4 as rural as possible.
Okay.
So now you can grab, so if you need population for District 4,
Mm-hmm.
you can grab population from any area outside of Mesa, the city of Mesa.
Okay.
Okay. So any rural area outside of Mesa. And I think those are. I think those are all my notes for River version 6A. So,
Okay. Are there other changes to
For this one? No,
Are there other parts you'd like to look at right away, or should we just wait till?
not at all. Just
Next one.
if you don't mind, I'll wait till those changes take place.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So then if it's all right, I guess I'll go to the next map we have for today. And then after that, I think it'd be good if I went over the list of maps I still have to do for Wednesday to make sure I've got everything and we're going in order. I believe these were all from Friday. There's some from Saturday that I'll have for Wednesday. All right, this map is called Congressional River 3-Border Combo version 1A. So if there's the reason I did it 1A is because I was unsure of which of the starting points I was supposed to use. I used the most recent river and 3-border, but if there's an earlier version of either you'd like, I could make a version 1B. Basically, what we did was we combined attributes from the river district and from the 3-border district maps. This is the first time you guys have looked at it, so I'd be happy to go over some of the areas where you'd be curious where the boundaries are right away. Bless you. Well, I guess if there's no real questions, I'll just start by explaining some of the rationale behind it. I believe some of the river district specifically references District 4, so I attempted to keep as much of that whole as possible. However, the one area where the 3-border and that differ greatly is that Yuma is kept as the 3rd district, I guess. So in this version, district number 4, proposed district 4, includes all of Yuma instead of just the northern parts of it. We were able to keep Yavapai County whole and Coconino outside of that in District 5. As a result, District number 2 did lose some of its Hispanic population, so we adopted some of the parts of the 3-border district to the definition of 2 and 7, the majority-minority districts.
Mr. Desmond, I just have a question with this one, with River District 3 border combo version. I don't think it was based on the grid map. Is that correct? If my understanding is this one was completely, we ended up doing away with some of the districts and starting from scratch on this one?
It was based on 2 maps that were both based on the grid map.
So it was based on the grid map, okay, because I'm sorry, I guess I misunderstood when we were creating this one.
So this is a combination of the 3-border district map, which originated with the grid map, and the river district, which originated with the grid map. So
Maybe I'm confused.
depends on how you define based on, I guess. So.
Sure, okay. Maybe I misunderstood. Thank you.
Are there specific areas to go into right away?
Yeah, Mr. Desmond, I'm curious about the border between 4 and 8, and just wondering if you can focus in. I wanted to see what kinds of towns are right at that border between 4 and 8.
Okay. I guess starting at the northernmost part, in the border between Coconino and Mojave counties, the border is pretty much just following the reservation lands. So, let me try. And the county boundary where possible. So.
Mr. Desmond?
Mm-hmm.
While you're dropping in blocks, can we take a look at major roadways, interstates? And,
Yes.
Start dropping in population centers as well.
Okay, so it follows along and picks up, parts of the Apache, and then so it does dip into Mojave County a little bit there. Then it goes back and follows along the border between Coconino and Yavapai County. Follows that pretty much exactly. There is some split towns that do cross county boundaries. I guess in the hierarchy of things not to split, I figured it was better not to split a county than it was to split a town if that intersected, but we could make that change. It just continues right along, includes all of Yavapai County, and then does dip into Maricopa here. So it has Peoria, it has Sun City West, parts of Whitman, parts of Buckeye. And then I believe it follows Highway 10 out to the Maricopa boundary, and then includes all of La Paz and all of Yuma going down south. And that's pretty much the from north to south. That's the border it follows.
Can you just go back, scroll up? I just want to see the 4 and 8 boundary a little more.
Yeah. With all the different layers, it does take a little while for it all to load. Would you like me to zoom in a little more there, or?
So Peoria is part of 4 in this? I can't tell that.
Peoria is not part of 4.
Okay,
Peoria
good.
is wholly contained in 8.
That's what I thought, okay.
The parts of
Yeah, I see
that
the,
do contain 4 are Sun City West, and then parts of Surprise, and then going south. So, could I have the pointer, actually? Sorry.
Here.
So, and then parts of Buckeye, and Buckeye's a pretty large, pretty spread out area. So I think that's cut in a couple of the different maps we've looked at, just because of necessity. So then it does cut through the heart of Buckeye, and then it follows, again, Highway 10 out to the Maricopa border. But in 8 are Citrus Park, Litchfield Park, parts of Goodyear, El Mirage, Sun City, Youngstown, all of Peoria, and then some of Glendale and Phoenix.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Sturts?
Mr. Desmond, on your second sheet in regards to the study data points for the River 3 border combo 1A, your chart for compactness and competitiveness is incorrect.
It is?
Well, unless it happened to be exactly the same.
Yes, I see what you're saying. I will fix that. That's my mistake.
Okay.
Sir Desmond?
Mhm.
Can you remind me what the benchmark is for the current benchmark for District 7 is? Congressional District 7?
I'd have to check again with legal counsel. Off the top of my head, I think it's 57.04.
57.04 is correct.
The other one is 50.2, I believe.
Benchmark is 50.23 and 57.48, or 45, excuse me.
57.45?
Mhm.
So this particular version brings down the HVAP quite significantly. And so I want to make sure that is noted. Because I don't know if that's going to, that's going to be an issue.
Yes.
I would love to keep the HVAP as low as possible, but this isn't going to happen. The staying at the current levels is probably our best move.
Madam
So
Chair.
it'd be possible for a version 2A to try to bring that up again, or if you guys want to direct me, I can show you the distribution or something. But again, with all these varying criteria, and especially exploring some what-ifs, I wasn't able to bring that up and meet some of the other goals. What I attempted to do here was just combine these in the easiest way possible, and then make sure there's still at least 2, majority, minority, but yeah.
And I think just quickly, I think the issue is with this particular version is that the District 2 goes into Maricopa, which takes part of, or some of the minority HVAP from District 7.
Yeah.
I think that's the issue with 2 and 7 in this particular version, so I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, I'd also like to make the comment at this point that we have 6 criteria in the Constitution, and 3 border districts is not one of those criteria. Increasing the representation, the number of congresspeople on the border is not one of those criteria. And my perspective is we need to be focusing on the 6 congressional criteria first. We can debate whether it's the quality of representation on the border, whether it's having competitive border districts. We can debate a lot of things about what would strengthen representation of the border. We can also look at congresspeople all over the country that are involved in border issues. But I don't want to lose sight. I understand these are what-ifs and folks are exploring things, but I don't want to lose sight of the fact that the criteria we need to satisfy are those in the U.S. and Arizona Constitution.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Sturts?
This is going to go back to a couple of, I'll bring up three issues. One, the The adopted grid map, where we began, had 3 border districts. That's where we began. Second, in regards to communities of interest, I'll bring forward a variety of different narratives that lead from 3 ports of entry, 3 major ports of our second largest trading partner, all having significance and having a significant amount of community of interest. I'll bring forward transportation corridors as a community of interest. I'll bring forward, and none of these will I ever mention that it's an independent congressperson that would be representing it, that would be the basis for that, for the view and the contemplation of a 3rd border district. So I'll have multiple different constitutional criteria that I'll bring forward to support a 3 border district scenario.
Mr. Desmond?
Mhm.
I'm curious about River District version 5 and how, and I'm assuming, Mr. Herrera, that that one split Yuma in a place that was to your liking, and I don't know if that was the Hispanic Coalition for Good Government's line, or if that was yours or not. But I was wondering if there's just a way to do the 3 border district and the river district in a way that possibly follows the river district version 5, which means Yuma does get split, but still has a 3 border district
I think
option.
The only possible solution would be to have a very, very narrow 3rd border district in Santa Cruz County. By and large, the western side of Pima County is, there's no one there. The census blocks are huge. So there's not like places you could divide it up. I mean, you could, it would be, basically the issue is nobody lives here. So it's kind of trivial to mark a line. The reason that the initial split was done is it kind of followed the interstate and included the Hispanic areas here. There is people in Yuma, and that helped bring up the HVAP in that district too. So I believe in one of the whole counties, I think it was version 4A, it did have a 3rd narrow district. I could bring that up and show you what that looks like to give you an indication. But
Yeah, please. Just,
other than
I've
that,
seen it,
there's
Madam Chair, while Mr. Desmond is bringing that up, I'd just like to remind our commissioners that the reason we created the river district the way it looks on version 5 and on 6A is because of the public comments from Bullhead City, Lake Havasu, and Yuma. And as you remember, the Tri-City leaders were commenting and praising the map from Commissioner McNulty and myself. So it wasn't something that I created. It was something that the people from those areas want.
Madam Chair,
Ms. McNulty?
I'm sure we'll have many more discussions about this, but my perspective is that a community of interest is a group of people in a specific location that share common ethnic, cultural, historic heritage. I believe that there are communities of interest along that border that have been there for centuries, and I don't believe a port of entry is a community of interest. And if we're going to pursue that line of logic, there are 2 Border Patrol sectors in Arizona. One is the Yuma sector and one is the Tucson sector. There aren't 3 sectors. And I know we can argue this back and forth, but to my way of thinking, those communities along the border should not be disenfranchised. And that'll be an important consideration from my perspective.
Madam Chair, Commissioner McNulty, how in the world do you get disenfranchisement out of, how do you get to that place so quickly?
Madam Chair, I can answer
I think
that.
it's very simple, Mr. Sturts. We have about 115 or 120,000 HVAP in San Luis and surrounding environs that right now are able to elect the candidate of their choice. And we have 6 Arizona criteria in the Constitution, 2 of which are federal, and that goes to the heart of one of the federal criteria.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Herrera?
I'd like to talk a little bit about that. As I mentioned before, I am from the San Luis Yuma area, and putting the San Luis Yuma, Somerton, Gadsden in the proposed river district that has Mojave and La Paz with Yavapai and all of Yuma, it just doesn't make sense. I think we will have an issue with the Voting Rights Act because of the large Hispanic population in that southwestern region being lumped into this river district that really, there's 2 different groups of people here. There's a really conservative area, and that's why what I try to do in my river district is keep those community of interest together, and then keep the high Hispanic population with 2, and to fulfill the Voting Rights Act. And also I think this is very similar to what the Hispanic Coalition for Good Governing was wanting, and I think we need to respect that. So I agree with Commissioner McNulty. I think they would be disenfranchised voters in that area if we decide to lump them in together with the entire river district.
Well, Madam Chair,
Mr. Sturts?
I think maybe then we should rename the river district into the Hispanic Coalition for Good Government District, and stop calling it a river district, because if you're really focusing on what you've just described as disenfranchisement and splitting, and it's really not the river district, it's really we're designing this around the Hispanic coalition map. So I want to make sure that I think you're trying to do both things.
Well,
and I can understand that.
Sure.
But at the same time, I don't want to be so equally dismissive. I mean, the chair brought the concept of the river 3-border combo for analysis. The original grid map brought us the concept of the original 3-border grid map, or districts. And we are talking about disenfranchisement and serving a particular submittal of documents and maps. Right now, my latest count is I've got 178 maps that have been submitted outside of this without the maps that we're already creating that we're needing to review. I know that there are many different iterations which have been proved out by the versions 1As, 6As, all different kinds that will meet the general criteria of the Voters' Rights Act. If we are going to be designing around the Hispanic Coalition's map, I want to just say that that's what you're doing instead of trying to create another story around it. And I think that you're trying to probably serve both sides, and I'm not going to go down that path. But I also don't want to get into a place where we are so summarily dismissing this work product about having 3 border districts without studying it.
No one is summarily dismissing anything. I simply I stated my opinion about the criteria that are most important. From my perspective, the Voting Rights Act is the most important criteria that we need to satisfy. I understand that you would like to create 3 border districts and I'm sure it's for a variety of reasons. My perspective is that a port of entry is not a community of interest. And I believe that there are other perspectives on community of interest. I stated what those were. That was not dismissing your perspective. I'm just telling you I disagree with you. And that I believe the Voting Rights Act is the most important thing we need to do here. The Arizona criteria are very, very weighty, but the law is the law. And the law says the Voting Rights Act comes first, and I believe that we need to pay attention to that. So you can view my stating my opinion as dismissing yours. That's not the case. We both have opinions, and I've described mine.
Madam Chair.
Wow, that was jinx. I'll go with Mr. Freeman. He hasn't spoken yet.
Thank you. I just wanted to get in on this. I don't think anyone should be dismissive, and I don't think anyone is of anyone's what-if scenarios. I mean, we heard this is not an easy problem to solve. No. We heard public comment in Bullhead City. We heard it in Yuma, in Sierra Vista, Nogales, Honda, all over the state. We heard lots of different things from different groups and different peoples with expressing their opinion on different interests. We heard a lot about the rural versus urban areas of interest. It's not an easy problem to solve, and I'm interested in looking at all of these what-if scenarios to see which one hopefully maybe can develop into the best map for us, or where we can take, as the chair suggested, aspects of two different what-if scenarios and see if they could be put together in some way that would leave us with a good map. So, we're going to look at this map with the 3 border districts on that was a creation of an iteration of the so-called whole counties map. I would like to go back and look at the other map, just to have you sort of zoom in on a couple areas on the map we were looking at immediately preceding that. I don't want to lose my opportunity to do that before, but let's go ahead and look at what you've got up on the screen now, if that's okay with the chair.
Madam Chair,
It
if
is.
I
Mr. Herrera?
can make a quick comment. I did refer to the Arizona Hispanic Coalition for Good Governing because it is, like I said, we do need to meet the Voting Rights Act. That's I think our most important criteria. I think none of us would disagree with that. And I think that coalition is represented by a variety of community leaders throughout the state. And their map is, I think, fitting in with the comments from the people, again, in Mojave, La Paz, and Yavapai that want that rural district, and the people in southern Yuma that still want to be represented and be able to elect someone of their choice. And that would make sense if they were in District 2. So, yeah, I do refer to the Hispanic, that particular group, but again, I'm trying to listen to the people from the Mojave, La Paz, northern Yuma, and their comments that they made, and also listen to the Hispanic groups that want to be represented, and obviously we have an obligation to meet the Voting Rights Act. So I'm trying to balance that out and try to do everything I can to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the Hispanic population and also the people that live in that area in the river district. So and it's not easy to balance, but that's what we're trying to do.
Thank you.
Okay. So the green line represents, is the whole county's version 4A, which, if I could just trace back the lineage of that one, started just a map trying to maximize the number of whole counties, as few splits as possible. It was then changed to not split any tribal lands. It was then asked to incorporate the Hispanic Coalition's District 2 and District 7.
Willie, is that 1A or 4A?
So the 4A is the black line, or the 1A. The combo map is the black line.
Okay.
The green line is just to show you what a Santa Cruz district would look like, a third border district that's in the center. So this is that objective happened to be meet with the whole county's 4A, which we looked at last week. So this one is, we were at the whole county's 3, which did split Yuma using the Hispanic Coalition and included half of Santa Cruz in that district, and half of it went to the I believe it's proposed District 1, which is in Cochise. And then Commissioner Sturts asked that in order to, again, maximize the number of whole counties, to include all of Yuma with the Hispanic Coalition District number 2, and also to include all of Santa Cruz, not split that with the district that was primarily gets its population from Pima County.
Mr. Herrera?
What is, Mr. Desmond, what is the HVAP for 2? Is that 2 now? Is that still
2 is still the one that includes
all of Yuma?
All of Yuma. I don't have that sheet with me and that data table, since this is just a layer, it's not a loaded.
I would probably assume that well.
Do any of you have actually River 4A, or whole counties 4A? I'm sorry.
No, I do not have it.
Yes.
Can I borrow that for a second? Thank you. So the HVAP in district number 3 is 50.25.
Which is the
District
Here.
number 3 is the Yuma.
District 2 here.
Is,
District 3, excuse me.
yeah. And then the HVAP in district number 7, again, is 59.17.
Goes to
Believe-
59?
Yeah, because the Hispanic coalitions have it at 60.2, and this was based off of that with just a few minor tweaks. So it dropped about 1% in this whole county scenario. And then I can turn this off again so you can see how it is in this combo 1A. We could also do a combo 1B or 2A, depending on how we want to do it, that would have a similar type of district.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Herrera?
No, in this particular version on District 4, the Pi tribes are in 4 and not in 5. So they're separated from 5?
In which, no, in the combo 1A, they are with 5. I can turn off let me turn off the county line, it might make it a little easier to see.
Okay, I see it now. And in this version, where is the city of Flagstaff?
The city of Flagstaff is in 5.
This is fine.
This district, this version does not, it splits, it keeps Yavapai wholly in 4 and keeps Coconino wholly in 5.
Okay.
Are there other questions about the 4A map, or should we, Commissioner Freeman, I believe you had some questions you wanted to see on this one?
Well, I don't know if the chair has questions on this.
No.
This map.
If you do, go ahead.
I mean, I'm tempted to talk about adjustments to the whole county's 4A, but I don't want to, I mean, my thought there was could the congressional district that includes Yuma, could those lines be adjusted to correspond more to the Hispanic Coalition's lines, to perhaps raise the HVAP if that's what's needed for that district? And then that is going to add population to proposed District 4, which, and we haven't zoomed in, but perhaps that would allow you to take out population from the area in Maricopa County so it doesn't intrude as much into Maricopa County.
Okay, so I think that would be essentially going back to what the version 3 looked like, where Yuma did have the split going across it. The only difference would be that Santa Cruz would not be a third border district in that.
Oh, it would not, because the thought with that scenario would be to keep that scenario viable with the 3 border districts. That's not going to be possible, you don't think?
No, that would be. I'm just trying to clarify exactly what you're looking for. So now would you like, I can do that as a what if, just wondering where it should fit. Should it be a combo? Or
what are we going to call it, I think is the
Yeah.
problem, so we keep track of these different lines of thought.
Yeah. Would it be possible for me to call it,
Well, I guess maybe it would be 5A. We'd keep the A designation to this line of thought.
okay,
See what I mean?
okay. So there is a 5B coming
No.
up for Wednesday, so this would be a 5A. Okay.
Right.
Let me just mark that down. Okay. Are there other changes to that 5A that you would like to see? Okay. Are there other questions about this combo map?
We're now going back to the combo map.
I mean, I've got that one. The data table is the combo map right now. The line, the green line, was just a layer I added that was the. So the plan that's open is the combo map.
Oh, okay. Could you please go and look at the boundary between District 6 and 3.
Yes. Okay, so this District 6 is taken pretty much directly from the River District version 5. In River District version 6, you'll remember we removed those parts of East Mesa. So it does have the arm that goes up into Phoenix and grabs the Arcadia areas. And that again is this area right here.
Right.
So I think this is pretty much exactly as it was in River version 5. Other areas you guys would like to look at right away, or changes to this one you'd want to see going forward, or would you like me to start from scratch again in any way, or?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Freeman?
this is another one where I'm going to need some time to study it to see what would be appropriate changes, and I'm resistant to making a change on the fly on this one right now.
Okay. And I can give you the files today, or they'll be on the website also.
Thank you.
Any other comments on this or other congressional maps?
Madam Chair?
Mr. Sturts?
Because these maps are also, we're also contemplating population, HVAP percentages, HVAP volumes, and compactness, and an interpretation of competitiveness. It will become incumbent upon the commission at some time to adopt standards and targets and goals. I know we're not talking about this as being a future agenda item, which I'm not contemplating, but I'm trying to get an understanding for the purposes of maybe description for Mr. Desmond, what is included as a definition under competitiveness as you currently have it crafted into your work product?
Okay. I don't have one is the answer. In the legislative and River 6, when I was asked to make them more competitive, that's what I just endeavored to do. So I attempted there to just bring down or raise the number of ones that were closer spread, just when possible, to make them less of a difference between statewide Republican and statewide Democrat. There was no end point, try to get X amount to this level. I just, where it seemed logical and feasible and not outrageous, just moved the lines to try to make that more competitive as a relative measure. And using that kind of on-the-fly criteria, the 08 and 2010 that we have currently loaded up.
Okay. And Madam Chair?
Mr. Sturts?
As a follow-up to that, can you give a description of what the aggregate, what is included in the aggregate for the 08 and 010 elections, or 08 and 2010 elections?
Yes, I can. So the fields that are included in that are just working across the Attorney General race in 2010, the Governor's race in 2010, the Mine Commissioner's race in 2010, Secretary of State in 2010, the Superintendent of Public Instruction in 2010, Treasurer in 2010, United States Senate in 2010, Presidential in 2008, Corporation Commissioner in 2008 and 2010. The averages of those averages.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Herrera?
I had, when we were talking about this originally, I'd mentioned that for just competitiveness, not for the DOJ requirements, that I wanted to focus solely on 2008, 2010, and then other commissioners have been bringing up 2004, 2006. And I think a good compromise is definitely taking all of them into account, but weighing them for relevancy and recency. As I said before, we have 4 elections, 2004. I mean, there's been a lot of changes in the state since 2004. So I think we should include them as well as 2006, but again, we should weigh them for relevancy, as I think I'd mentioned before that, just giving an example, giving 2010 a little more weight, maybe either 100%, 2010 would be 100%, 2008 would be 75%, 2006 would be 50%, and then 2004 would be 25%. I think that would be a good scale and a good compromise, because I would not be in favor of giving them all equal consideration, considering 2008, 2010 are the most recent elections. I mean, this is what we have. We should be using our most recent data. So that would be my recommendation, and I think a very good compromise.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Sturts?
As the discussion of definitions is not an agendized item, I don't think that we should, and council could probably confer with me, I don't think we should go down that path today. Okay. My goal was just to determine what was included in the document in the data points that you have. And if I can just go through this again so I'm correct, that it's the 2010 governors, AG, mining inspector, secretary of state, superintendent of public schools, state treasurer in 2008, president, United States senators, and corporation commission.
I believe the Senate is from 2008, not 2010.
Or 2008, excuse me, 2008, okay.
And I should be clear that there are a lot of different ways to look at these in aggregate. The way we're currently doing it would be to weigh each race evenly. That is, that there are down ballot statewide races where there's fewer votes cast. So that if you were to take all of the Democratic votes for each race and all of the Republican votes for each race and use those to average, that would weigh more heavily towards top of the ballot issues. For the purposes of this kind of quick and dirty measure, to use the term they used last time, I guess, we took the average from each individual race, so that if corporation commissioner has a third less votes, it's still weighed evenly with presidential or Senate or some of the top of the ticket ones. And we weighed them also evenly across the years, so there is more of a, I guess, probably an emphasis on 2010 because there was more races then. We'd be more than happy to weigh them any way that you guys would direct, or also maybe it would be good to give you a kind of a cheat sheet of the different ways of weighing them together and the statewide average. So the way this happens, I believe the statewide average is 56.02% Republican in the last 2 years. It's possible that using different combinations of averages, still using all 10 races, but just averaging them differently would change that. I doubt it would be a significant change, but it's possible that it would be, a slight variation. So, not to necessarily make more work for myself, but we'd be happy to, run those numbers different ways and let you know, I guess, the statewide Democratic and the statewide Republican two-way percentages in the different combinations. And again, these percentages are two-way percentages. So it's the Democratic vote over the Democratic and Republican vote, and the Republican vote over the Democratic and Republican vote. They're not all-way percentages, which would not, the Democrat, the Republican would not add up to 100 then, because there are some votes for write-in candidates, or for Libertarians or Green Party, or some of the other minor parties that are on some of these races.
Mr. Herrera?
I think Commissioner Sturts was correct. This is not an agendized item, so we probably need to table it, and it probably would make sense for us to do that.
Okay. But, Madam Chair?
Mr. Sturts?
As a as a drill down to another layer, again, of the data that you're already presenting, I just want to make sure that that we've already identified the data points you go in and how you create the percentages, and you've blended these so that it's 100% total. You create some sort of a formula that's allowing you to do that.
It's simply a two-way percentage. So it's the Democrat or the Republican vote over the total of the Democrat and Republican vote, so that there is no other party included in these calculations.
And in those calculations, are you including any voter turnout in regards to, are you using any other data points to craft this, for example, percentage of turnout in a particular county of Republicans or Democrats? This is just raw, results-oriented data.
Correct.
Okay.
And then I believe at the meeting on Friday, you had asked to also include registration as a measure of competitiveness, and I think we're in the process of doing that. There is, I'll let Ken speak to that more when he's here. I can present more information on that on Wednesday, but I know there are some, the last commission ran into some problems using different definitions of active and inactive voters in different counties, so we're trying to make sure it's consistent statewide, and just to give you the process of how that works is typically you have to geocode every voter based off of their address, which is simply assigning a latitude and longitude to them based off of their address, and then that will allow you to know which census block they live in. Geocoding is not a perfect science, so you do have holes there where certain streets or certain addresses don't geocode to the exact latitude and longitude, and then it goes to the next level up, sometimes is the street or the zip code or whatever. So that hasn't been done yet because we need to be pretty explicit in how we do that to make sure it's consistent statewide and it doesn't bias any type of address or any type of person. So we're still working through that right now, but that will be eventually, hopefully very soon, available on the PACE files that you guys all have and can be used in some of these competitiveness calculations.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Okay, any other comments or questions?
I do have one comment. I actually think this kind of goes to the heart of the matter that's on the agenda. And I just want to be clear that my perspective is that with regard to competitiveness, what I'll be looking for is that all other things being equal, the outcome is not, cannot be predetermined. And I'll want a number of different ways of looking at that. I don't think there's any one way or any one definition. I think it's going to have to be case by case. I think it's going to require a lot of work. I think it's going to require a lot of measures. And we need to be doing it right now. So my request would be that on every one of these iterations that we're looking at now, that we're thinking about that, because we can't have a situation where that gets relegated to the end. The Constitution says we are to favor competitiveness as long as it's not to the substantial detriment of other criteria. And so I want to do that. I want to favor it as we're looking at these maps. And if there is substantial detriment, tease that out, understand what it is, and talk about it. But I want to make sure it's front and center.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Freeman?
I agree with Commissioner McNulty, which is why I've been asking for the most robust set of data we can generate and attach to each one of these maps, each iteration, so we can see things like a complete set of election history data and voter registration data as well. The more information we have in front of us to make these judgments, I think the better.
Any other comments?
Madam Chair?
Mr. Sturts?
I happen to agree with Commissioner McNulty that we do need to drill this down. I also want to refer back to that competitive districts should be favored where to do so, create no significant detriment. We've reiterated that about 1 billion times. We don't need to go back over that. But when we're talking about party registration and voter history data, should be excluded from the initial phase of the mapping process, but may be used to test data for compliance. That's the real phrase that I keep going back to, and that's that we need to define, we need to talk about, one, the reason I brought up the question about what's included in these data points is that it's clear to me that these are a down and dirty sort of quick analysis, but certainly do not include all the data that's going to be able to tell us truly whether or not we've got competitiveness. So it's going to be incumbent upon us to get that squared away and to create, and as we, and I'll move to the next time when we come up on future agenda items to talk about definitions, so we can drill these down so we've got some sort of a baseline to reference to as we move forward.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, let's check the time. It's 10:41, and we'll be having a short recess at 11, so we could start in on the legislative.
If it's,
Go ahead, Mr. Desmond.
I'm sorry, could I go over the criteria I have for the other maps coming up before we go into that?
Oh, please, yeah, for the other directions we've given you, yep.
Just to make-
Mr. Sturts?
One quick question, Mr. Desmond. Do you have other data points available in your database that you could expand in regards to competitiveness rather than this quick down and dirty that you have now?
No.
For example, you've got no results of congressional races.
No, we do. The issue with using congressional races is that they haven't all been contested, so that let's say you're drawing a new district that goes half over a district that was contested and half over a district that wasn't. It would wildly skew how the partisan makeup appears to be using congressional. So far, we've only been using statewide as a result of that, because those were all evenly distributed across the state. It's possible to look at kind of a fairly distributed makeup. The individual races are all available on the data files. They're available on the files we've given the commissioners. They're available on the online redistricting page and stuff. But for purposes of this kind of quick analysis, we have not used congressional because it is not a universally populated field.
Madam Chair, Mr. Desmond, would it be any easier to use simply, instead of this aggregate, which is missing a lot of other data and a lot of other opportunity, would it be easier to actually distill it down to something more rudimentary, like registration of?
Yes, once we have the registration all matched in. So that's just not available yet because of the difficulties with trying to match people's registration to their particular census block.
So when do you think that that's going to be available?
I know we're working on it right now. I'm not sure, though. That's not something I've been dealing with. That's been Ken and Brad in our office.
And Madam Chair, we've got an extraordinarily short wick on this candle. That, based on our current schedule, we are going to be publishing draft maps a week from Friday for both legislative and congressional districts. And it looks like we still have data that hasn't been assembled yet. So
I'll make sure that's a priority. I believe the reason that this is what is available currently is, we had this data for the voting rights analysis. It was the initial what we were asked to do. B, I believe in Ken's competitiveness presentation, running some of the analysis, it showed that election results were a better measure of competitiveness over the last 10 years than registration, although registration was still a good predictor. So we'll be, and see, it just that file does take a long time to get prepared. So I'll make sure that's a priority, and I should be able to report back to you on Wednesday.
And again, Mr. Desmond, one of the reasons why I recall the conversation then That was one of the, when I first brought up, we're about 2004 and 2006 data, because he was looking at a 10-year window, and the 2004, 2006 were the first where the pre-cleared maps were actually put into place, and using that as additional data points. So even from Ken's perspective, I think that he was looking at those as being important criteria as well. So that's it for that topic, Madam Chair. Thank you for indulgence.
Okay, if there's nothing else about these maps, I think going forward, there is the legislative V5 is what we're going to call it, which is what Commissioner Herrera had asked for, which would be using the river district as kind of a rough guideline for some of the legislative districts. I think we're going to work together possibly this afternoon so we can kind of, I played around with it a little this weekend and was having a little difficulty accomplishing that, so I think we're going to sit down and it'll give me a little closer direction, and then I'll be able to work on that. There is also the whole counties version 5B, which Commissioner Freeman had asked for, and my criteria I have written on my notes, not my initial notes, the notes I put together when I was making my to-do list, was to include all of CD1 out of Maricopa, all of Pinal except for reservation areas in CD1. All reservations in Pinal should be in CD3. To increase the population in CD3 with the West Valley of Phoenix, and to unassign all of the areas of 5, 6, 8, and 9. And then 5C would take those exact same criteria, but reassign 5, 6, 8, and 9 based on compactness and respect for census places.
And roughly equal population, like you always.
Roughly equal population, yes.
That sounds about right.
Okay. And then also, we've just added a whole county 5A, which would redo the split in Yuma based off the Hispanic Coalition for Good Government's line, but leave that narrow district that goes north of Santa Cruz in there. So it would be a whole counties with the split Yuma, but the third border district in Santa Cruz. And I think that's it for right now. So unless there are ones that I'm missing. And I'm sure there might be more legislatives.
Okay, any other comments on congressional?
Plus the ones from today, I guess.
Plus the,
Plus what we did today.
yeah, exactly. Okay.
Okay. The time is 10:49, so we can talk for about 10 minutes get started on legislative, and then we'll take our recess and then come back and continue that. So Mr. Desmond, do you want to talk about what you've presented, what you've got prepared for us for today?
Yes. So for today, we have 2 new legislative options. Again, there's option 1 and option 2, which follow kind of a parallel track. 2 in census geography right now. Follow a parallel track. Initially, they were designed just to create the 9 majority-minority districts. Following that, they were altered to non-split reservation areas. Following that, they were changed to respect census place boundaries. The 4th version had some specific changes dealing with Prescott Valley, and just generally the proposed District 6 that kind of runs in Yavapai and Coconino and Navajo. And then this version was taking those ones and, where possible, making them more competitive. So if it's all right, I guess we could start with option 1, version number 5. Okay, are there places you'd like to look at right away? I guess first we can start with the majority-minority districts. There was, I believe, a lost district here that had been a coalition district. District 29 is now, it had been just under 50% non-Hispanic white. Now it's just over 50%, so it's not technically a coalition district. I can change it again to try to bring that back up, but it's fairly close and wouldn't be a hard switch later, so I just kind of left it as it was. There is, again, the majority Native American district, 5 majority Hispanic districts, and then 2 plurality Hispanic districts. So instead of there being 1 coalition, 1 plurality, now there's 2 plurality. And again, what plurality means is that Hispanics are the largest voting bloc, larger than white. Not a coalition, which is a combination of non-white groups are the largest. As far as the competitiveness goes, it is not like a bright line definition I used. As I mentioned earlier, I just attempted to lower that number where possible. So you'll see there is quite a few that are lower than 10 or 15, kind of around there, and more competitive than it was when it started. I wasn't really sure how far to go or where to stop or what to find it, so I just tried to not make ridiculous changes that brought it down a little bit. And I think if we want to just look at 10 or lower, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 districts that have a spread less than 10. And then I'm not even sure what the numbers are of Republican and Democrat over a 10-point difference. And again, 10 points is just a round number to look at, not a definition. I'm abdicating here.
Yeah, let's just be clear that 10 points is not a competitive district under any definition. I think we need to be much closer to 0.
Okay. Are there specific areas you'd like to look at right away?
Mr. Sturts?
The challenge that I have in having any commentary about legislative districts is being handed these maps today, and not being able to review them, not being able to drill down, not being able to look at the data pieces behind them. So I'll have no comment on either one of these until I get a chance to actually review the data that we've been given. So,
Okay. Yeah, I'd be more than happy to go over them again at Wednesday's meeting. They weren't done until late last night.
Sure.
So they're just with the small window between meetings, there's just not much time for me to get them to.
It's no disrespect to you, Mr. Desmond. I know that you spent all weekend trying to get prepared for what we gave you at 8 o'clock on Friday night, so my kudos to you for your work product. But I can't, there's nothing that I can comment on about what you've delivered.
Any other comments from other commissioners?
Remind me, Mr. Desmond, on got option 1, version 5, and option 2, version 5. And option 1, we did what?
Well, we did the same things for both of them.
Okay.
So the first draft was,
Oh, that's right, because we started with the 2 different ways of looking at it. Okay, so one was splits?
the first change to the grid map was to create 9 majority-minority districts. The second change was to not split reservations. The third change was to, where possible, respect census place boundaries. The fourth change was some that you had asked for with Homer and Prescott Valley and some of those changes. And then the fifth iteration was to make them more competitive.
More competitive. Okay, thank you.
And that was for both option 1 and 2.
Any other comments?
Other than it's 10:57, and I
Yeah.
think
So I think we should have recess, and this will be a 20-minute recess, come back at 11:20, so I guess a 23-minute recess. It's now 10:57. Thanks. Sure. We'll enter back into public session now. Recess is over. The time is 11:32. And we are on agenda item 4, talking about those legislative what-if scenarios. Did any commissioners have additional comments on those? I know we just got them, and so we all want to study them, I think, more, but
Madam Chair?
Mr. Sturts?
I would like to, and maybe some of the other commissioners, and this is really more of a point of reference, is that I've had the great opportunity of working in most of the municipalities in Maricopa County. So I know Maricopa County. I know we still maintain a residence in Scottsdale, so not too far from Mr. Herrera's Arcadia district. So I've got good practical knowledge of everywhere from Queen Creek all the way up to Sun City. So as we start drilling this down, I will be bringing forward ideas, and they'll be based on some practical knowledge that I have of Maricopa County areas, travel patterns, that sort of thing, so that when we're having these discussions, they'll be based on 10 years worth of experience working in the greater Phoenix metro area.
Thank you. I think that raises an important point, actually, that, you know, we talk a lot about public input and how important that is, and it is, and we're receiving a lot of it and reviewing all of it and incorporating it into these different what-if scenarios, and then ultimately the draft map that we create. But I think each of the commissioners also has obviously relevant knowledge for where they live, and some of you are lifelong Arizonans and just have a lot of inherent knowledge, and I think it's important to bring all of that to the table too. So I would encourage folks to speak up on that. Any other comments, or
Madam Chair,
Mr. Freeman?
maybe it would be helpful to sort of get a start us thinking about how we're going to approach and analyze the maps. If we have Mr. Desmond sort of walk us through just some select areas and show us explain his decisions, his thinking process, and where we put these lines. And in particular, first glance, I'm on option 1, version 5, and the area of proposed legislative district 5 up near the word Yavapai, which is in the far eastern point of that district. Maybe, I don't know if there's something there worth commenting upon or not, but just sort of, and looking at the splits report, there are some split communities, and there's probably there might be some rationale behind that. There might be, well, there wasn't enough time really to sort of fine grain it to eliminate all those.
Absolutely. Let me just get everything set. Okay, so Legislative District 5, I believe, was the reason for this, I guess, northern boundary is one of the iterations that had us respect Native American reservation lands. There is a census tract, I believe, that follows right along this border of the reservation land. However, there is some additional lands off the corner of it that are like square tracts that do not have kind of a census tract that follow along them. So if I'm correct, we just kind of followed the nearest census tract. I see that we do have Meadview split. That was not intentional, and that's something we could easily rectify, I believe. And let me put the county layer on top. See those boundaries easier.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Sturts?
As a follow-up to Commissioner Freeman's thought process, I think that you might be onto something that might be very simple. And maybe we start at 1 and work ourselves to 30 and say, how did you discover this? How did you create what was the thinking process that you had in giving us the lines that we have? I know that there's been commentary. Commissioner McNulty brought up the river, the Santa Cruz River issue, making sure that we had inclusion of both sides of the river. It's the most inhabited river valley in North America. It's probably something to keeping that intact, so on and so forth. But it might, from my perspective, and probably from the general public's perspective, it would be good for us to be able to move through these and have a knowledge of how we got to this point. It might be good for you to walk us through them.
Okay.
I'm not sure, Madam Chair, you can.
Other commissioners have thoughts on that?
My only thought is that I think you just told us how you got here from the grid maps, what steps you went 1 through 4 or 5. So I mean, you can go into detail if you want, but I'm not sure that will really help me figure out where to go next. I will at some point I do have some comments today on the legislative maps, but we can do that later.
Okay. And, I'm not sure I'll be able to remember every iteration and line change I've made. Sort of a combination of going through the processes that have gotten them to where they are, and also just where they are now might be good, just so you can kind of dive into some of the borders and kind of look at it. Should I continue on with this District 5 then, or do you want to start from 1? Maybe.
Chair's discretion.
Yeah, I don't know if we need to go through every district on this particular map, but I do think that's going to be important when we get to the draft map stage to actually, if there are some decisions that are getting made, that we need to understand exactly how and why they were made the way they were.
Okay.
But maybe for these what-if scenarios, I think we can just talk more generally right now, unless someone has a specific question on a particular line.
All right. Let me just look at the last part of this one, just to answer the original question. And you will see there are some split areas here. I'm going to shade the census places again, so it's a little easier to pick them out from one another. So it looks like this does split a little bit of the Chino Valley, and it does split Williamson. I'm guessing I just didn't pay as much attention to not splitting those in version number 3 of option number 1. And that's probably just an oversight on my part, not a conscious decision, so that it's possible to clean up things like this. I don't think there's a rationale for why this is, except that there's probably census tracts that cut right along here. Yeah, so even looking at the census block group, it is a large chunk of area. That only has 2,500 people in it, so that's that's the reason the line follows that way. It's just because at some point, tract or block group was used to kind of move things around, or even in the original grid, it's possible that was a border. And then I guess just following this line down, it doesn't really split many other areas, I think. Except for, mean view again. So. Are there other districts specifically that we'd like to look at based off of the splits report or the compactness, competitiveness, racial breakdowns?
Madam Chair?
Mr. Sturts?
Well, since we're in Casa Grande, why don't we isolate Casa Grande and take a look at how that's been broken up?
Okay, Casa Grande is split here. It's split in a lot of places, a lot of the maps. I think that part of this, I don't have a. I think part of that reflects that District 11 was in this latest iteration changed, taking some of the population from Casa Grande in an effort to make it District 11 more competitive. I could be wrong about that, but that seems likely.
And that was going to be a point of interest for me, which was the new District 11, where if it borrows from Casa Grande, it also looks like it gets up in, it's hard for me to tell, in the Southeast Valley, and it looks like there's a little spike that goes down into Pima County, all the way down to Tucson, it looks like.
There is a spike that goes into Tucson in order to get Hispanic and basically a Democratic population to make this one more competitive. It's one of the ones where I did endeavor to make that a more competitive district. I can zoom in on that if you like. So 11 does come up and go all the way down in as a spike. And again, that did mess with census place boundaries. The criteria for this particular iteration were several-fold, and I guess because the main focus of this was to be more competitive, I kind of defaulted to splitting things if I had to.
Mr. Desmond, what was the prior map? Was it option 2 version 4, option 1 version 4?
Option 1 version 4.
Can you compare them?
Sure.
You know, one thing I'm thinking is, and this might be a comment for Buck, I almost think we need to bring a printer so that we can print some of these comparisons, for example. So we understand what we're changing here, because I know none of us can just have all of this in our heads. It's just not possible. And if we ask you to make the comparison, you can't save that screenshot, can you?
What do you
It'd
mean?
be easier if we just printed it out right as you prepare it.
I mean, I could add that as a layer to future ones so that it would be a separate line on there.
Okay.
Um,
I think it should be a separate map.
a separate map?
Yeah,
with
that,
the
yes,
old-
that the comparison should be separate so it doesn't
Okay. That is,
distract from the map itself.
okay, so this heavy red line is the old district. So you'll see District 11 did run down into Tucson earlier, but not nearly as far. This is all added to it as a result of going farther in. It needed to give population to those that it was taking from by making it skinnier, so it's more of a finger kind of going in there. I know this is a little difficult to see, but so this black line represents what District 11 is now. This area represented what it used to be.
I'm going to ask you to make some changes for a new version based on version 4.
Okay.
Option 2, version 4.
Okay. Should I open up the?
Only when everyone's done looking at this, but I'm just trying to figure out which version I want to use as a starting point, and I know I'll get lost if I use this one. I need to use what I was looking at over the weekend. So when people are ready, I'll ask you to open that.
Can I ask a quick question on this? The northern border on the Catalina Foothill Census Place,
Yes.
what is that?
You mean like what streets are these?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't think it is the county line.
Really?
I don't see any sort of street that runs along there.
Someone said, could it be a Forest Service boundary line?
So the county line is up here. So
That's, yeah, the county.
if you look though, let me. So all the land though that's north of it up into Saddlebrook and Catalina is non-incorporated.
So what is that line? I mean, do we think it's Ina, the
Madam Chair, I
road?
think it might be an arbitrary line. That's the base of the Catalina Mountains.
Yeah, because it's north of Ina, isn't it? That line.
I think we have.
And what about the the western border too, I'm just curious. For Catalina Foothills, what that is. I'm thinking. 7.
So that's First Avenue, it's the western border.
And just scroll up. Scroll up, please, to follow that line more.
So it goes up and then it turns into Christie, or, yeah, Christie Drive. And then it doesn't look like there's a road at all on the northern boundary, really. So it's probably just a latitude and longitude or something that was originally.
Huh. Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Sturts?
Willie, if I'm correct in what you were showing, that you had to go from, I'm just trying to get the length and the breadth of what you needed to create by creating block by block by block to create the competition in Legislative District 11. Can you walk me through how you got to almost to South Tucson?
It is South Tucson. Basically, it was just the first place I started, like my first criteria were to look at the current differential between Democratic and Republican statewide percentage, and ones that seemed like they were not like 30-point spreads. So I started with some that were in like the teens and 20s and stuff, and looked to see if there was areas surrounding those that had either a Democratic area or a Republican area that could be added easily that would make that more competitive. In this case, if I turn on the census block group layer, I'm going to turn off streets, generate so fast or so slowly, and I'll shade it by % Republican. And again, blue will represent more Democratic, red will be more Republican. So initially, it was the southern border was right here. And because there is some Democratic areas just next to that, I just started going down, kind of block group by block group, accepting the change, allocating the now underpopulated district a little bit from District 11 and until I got it down to a lower level. I believe that final level in 11 is 8.98 difference. So it's 54.49 in % Republican and 45.51% Democratic.
So, Madam Chair?
Mr. Sturts?
Willie, could you go ahead and track it from, to tell me that we're at that corner, which is, trying to figure out where that is. What's the intersection of?
So this is King Parkway, and this is Interstate
10. Interstate 10. Interstate 10 and Keno Parkway. So Keno and I-10. And could you take me to the northernmost connection of, the northernmost point of Legislative District 11 as you've got it?
It is here. It looks like the northernmost point would be up here.
Town of Coolidge?
Yeah, or well, it's all of Coolidge, I believe. South Florence a little bit. If you zoom out, you'll be able to see the. So yeah.
Can you, Madam Chair?
Mr. Sturts?
Mr. Desmond, could you turn on the population layers?
How would you like it shaded?
It doesn't matter. I'm just trying to, what I'm trying to determine is that how much, this is a rural, urban combination district, it appears.
Yes.
That crosses over 2 counties. And Madam Chair, the reason I'm trying to ask the question is that I'm trying to get my arms around why this district would ever exist in this configuration, other than to try to create a competitive district. I can't see any reason at all that it would exist in this configuration.
I mean, in the previous version, it was still, the northern border hasn't changed, so it's just the southern going down into, and that was simply to make it more competitive. The district on the whole being into Tucson and including, you know, the rural areas of Pinell is just a reflection of the grid map, I guess. So,
In the goal of capturing, of being able to create competitiveness in districts, are there districts that you recognize, as you are now getting a better understanding of the state of Arizona, that lend themselves to be more competitive while still meeting other criteria of compactness, contiguity, and would be able to reflect some sort of community of interest, rather than trying to, because this is a created district to meet a part. This is an outcome-based design. The outcome was you wanted it more competitive, so you had to create this by capturing spaces and voter blocks that have no relevance to Coolidge. I mean, South Tucson has no relevance at all to Coolidge. I can't think of any, at least. Maybe somebody can enlighten me, but I can't think of any. But are there other ways of looking at to try to get that goal that keeps getting repeated about trying to create competitiveness? You find some natural pockets that you're able to do that.
Mr. Sturts, I think that's our job. I don't think that's the mapping consultant's job, and I don't think they're there yet. I mean, we've hardly done any work on these legislative district maps. We've made 3 or 4 really broad brush changes, and it's going to be our job to try and meld all these things together. So I don't think they can answer your question yet. I think we need to figure that out.
Well, again, then it takes me back to my original discussion, was that there are lines being drawn on a map that we are not drawing, that we are being represented, that are being based on decisions that we're not making. Therefore, I would like to see every single one of these legislative maps drilled down one by one, 1 through 30, to show what all these lines mean and why they're there.
But these aren't
If
the
not,
maps.
we should scratch this and we should draw them ourselves.
That's a completely invalid point, because
It's not an invalid point. It's a reflection of what you just said to me. You just said that our mapping consultant is not to be drawing these maps. That's our job.
No, I didn't say that at all. I said arriving at a way that the districts can be created to incorporate all 6 criteria is our job, that we need to do by drawing and redrawing and understanding. So you've made your point that this particular district, it's not a district. This particular configuration was put together to satisfy that, and it doesn't work because there are 5 other criteria, and we're going to go through that with every single one, but that doesn't mean we need to do that. We just need to keep working with these things to take into account all 6 to move the ball ahead.
Madam Chair, Commissioner McNulty, I don't disagree with the thing that you just said, but my point being is that as the mapping consultant is becoming more familiar with these blocks, that I would believe that their familiarity of these blocks in these areas is going to be to an advantage to us.
I hope our own familiarity with these areas and these blocks will be an advantage to us, and that we will ultimately be able to give the mapping consultant the direction that it needs to satisfy all 6 criteria.
So is there a suggestion for us to stop the adjustment process now and for us to walk away and to distill these maps better so that we as individual commissioners have a better understanding?
Exactly the opposite, that we keep adjusting and considering all 6 criteria rather than looking at any of these as static.
Well, you've got me fumbling over how to do both simultaneously, so I'll move on.
Okay, are there other areas, or just trying to think about getting to how they've come to be? Maybe it'd be helpful if we put the original grid over the top so you could see how they've differed from there. If not, I can go to other districts.
I have a question, and I'm not sure this can be discussed given the agenda, but just in terms of just how we're numbering the legislative districts and congressional districts, it is confusing because everyone thinks of their own, the current districts as they are currently numbered. And I'm not sure how the last commission did that, but is there a way to, is there a way to, better reflect this so that it is clearer for everyone? Is that okay for us to talk about the numbering as part of this agenda? Because I'm just curious what other commissioners think.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I think you can discuss it if that's part of the what-ifs for reference point, if you have a different numbering system to recommend as part of that process.
Yeah, and I don't mean to be throwing a wrench into things since, we have these various versions where we've been doing it this way, so we may want to continue on, but I'm just curious what others think. Or maybe there's a way to have an overlay of current districts as they are currently numbered. Go ahead.
We could change the numbers to letters and just do it uniformly. So 1 would be A, 2 would be B.
And is that helpful or is that more confusing?
I know I found it difficult at first, but now I'm getting used to these numbers, so it would almost make me more confused, I think, to have to switch to another. Or if we did, I would ask that we put both.
I'm fine with the way they are right now.
Okay.
That's not to say that when we publish a draft map, we might want to think about
Yeah,
how we
that's a
present it. But
good idea. When we publish a draft map, it would be great to be showing what the other, the current districts as they are. Okay. Any other legislative comments that we want to make on either of these, option 1 or 2?
I do have comments, but I'd not like to use a different base map.
Okay. So should I go to option 2 then?
I think it's version 4, option 2, version 4.
Okay.
Which appears to be the only map I haven't brought with me, I guess because I had it out. If you would please put on the census block, the census place layer.
Okay.
And then, I think so. Thank you, Scott. And we'll probably need to see streets at some point.
Okay.
I don't know if I can do this because it's just so, the grids are so far off from the communities themselves, but what I want to do is work on the southern Arizona area and create a configuration that I think makes more sense with how the city of Tucson works, or how southern Arizona works.
Okay.
So I'm going to be looking at grid 2, grid 10, and grid 9, I think, and I'd like to start with grid 2,
Okay.
the north west corner.
All right.
See that little, go further east a little bit. We're going to get to that, but let's go east. Okay, see the pink
Yes.
and the green? I think the pink is Vail and the green is Corona de Tucson.
Yeah, let me change the labels to make it a little easier to see, hopefully. Does that make it any better? I made them a little bigger, so it might be worse in a minute. But. So the lower pink is Vail.
Okay, that's Vail, that's Corona de Tucson, that's Rick Sturtz's head, so I need to move over. Yeah, I'd
Corona
like
de
to move this boundary over here so that Corona de Tucson is with Vail and Rincon Valley. And this is rough. You know, we'll just have to do this as a beginning and then see where it takes us, I think.
Well, should we?
And I'm not sure you need to do this right now. It may just drive people insane.
Okay.
But what I want to do, Mr. Desmond, is I want to bring this boundary, whatever this line is, just as a rough, and I want to bring it down and under Corona de Tucson and then pick up the Santa Cruz County boundary and follow that south.
Okay. So here's the, let me zoom out.
And so the main impact of that is going to be to make Santa Cruz County whole. So one thing that does for you is eliminates the need to figure out where the Santa Cruz River is and put it on a map.
Okay.
Because as I thought about this, I realized that the Santa Cruz River is not just a river, it's a watershed, and that whole community of Sonoyta and Patagonia that's in this eastern part of Santa Cruz County, I think belongs with the rest of Santa Cruz County.
Okay.
So we're going to be coming down, you know, and then we're going to go back over here.
That makes sense. And then should District 1 make up the population it's going to lose in the rest of Santa Cruz?
You know, I don't know all those answers yet, and we may have to figure those things out, but for right now, so yes, somewhere we're going to have to pick that up, but I don't exactly know where.
Okay.
So once we get down here, can you turn on the HVAP
Yes.
layer? I want to look at the border east of Santa Cruz County. Not the whole border, just this area over here.
will just be. All right, so there's the HVAP scale. And where exactly did you want to look? I can make this larger also.
And do we have the census places turned on?
Census places are turned on, but they're underneath, so I'll have to move that to the top. It's going a little slow right now. It's trying to display a lot of data. So the census place, I can have them uniquely colored, and then you can't see the HVAP underneath, or I can have them just the outline.
Okay, it's not that important, but here's what I want to try. I want, and those who are concerned about compactness should shield their eyes, or look away.
What? Oh,
We're assuming now that this is all together, right? Santa Cruz County is all together.
Yeah.
There are two towns over here. One is Bisbee, and one is Douglas. And I want you to draw as an maybe as a alternative to this, to what I'm working on here, something that comes out and grabs those two towns, and not just the towns, but the communities. I don't know, and when I say not just the towns, I mean not just the municipal boundary of the towns, but incorporate the bulk of the urban population in those two areas. Now, as you come east from Bisbee, you're going to be hugging the border here, I think, because you don't want to take in Sierra Vista, and so it's not going to look, compact at all. But I'd like you to draw that and show us the difference in HVAP and the difference in population, doing it the two ways. So one will be just including. There you go. This is Bisbee. This is Douglas. And then we're going to come along under Palominas, I think, back over to Santa Cruz County. Just a what if, just to see.
All right.
Okay? Now, I'd like to go back up in District 2 to the northern part of it. And this little vacuum cleaner here, whatever this thing is,
Yeah.
that has Drexel Heights and Valencia West in it.
Yes.
I want to move those up into 3 with Tucson Estates.
Okay.
And we'll get back to the how we tie that into the. I'm not exactly sure how we tie this in here, but what I'm thinking is we need a line here somewhere like 22nd Street or somewhere in there in the southern part of Tucson. So just hold that thought. You don't need to find that right now.
Okay.
So let's go to grid 10, to the northeast corner. I think this is Houghton and Speedway, Houghton Road and Speedway, approximately. What I want to do is I want to reconfigure Tucson so it's more east-west than north-south, so that it's more consistent with the way Tucson really is. So I want to start here. I want to find Tanque Verde Road, and then I want to follow Tanque Verde to River Road, which is a very prominent geographic landmark in Tucson. And then I want to follow River Road east. To a point, and I'm not sure what point that should be, but just for purposes of putting something together, I'm going to say Alvernon Road.
Can you spell that? I'm sorry.
Alvernon.
Okay.
And then we're going to come south from there to Grant Road. And then east to, or west, sorry, to either Campbell or First Avenue. And then south to you'll see the Barraza Aviation Highway. I could try and draw this on a road map. And then follow that to the north boundary of the Air Force Base. Follow that southeast to the north boundary of the Air Force Base. And I don't know if that exactly matches up, but what that's going to do is create something that includes central Tucson in more of an east-west arrangement than this north-south arrangement. And then I'd like to go to grid 9, which is right above grid 10. So the south boundary of grid 9 is going to become the north boundary of grid 10. And then again, just for purposes of getting started on the concept, I'd like to go, we're going to do the same sort of thing. We're going to take this and make this more horizontal. So follow I-10, Interstate 10 northeast. It may be that you find that I couldn't quite tell whether there's a national forest boundary along here or some census place boundaries, but roughly I-10. We're going to follow that northeast until we get to a point around Linda Vista Road, I think. And what we're looking for is we're going to be south of Oro Valley here. So we're going to get Marana and Oro Valley and Catalina and Saddlebrook are going to be all together, or most of Marana. There's no way we can get all of it. And then we're going to come across, and that is going to become the north boundary of 9. Okay?
Okay.
So then I'd like to go back to 3, to our erstwhile vacuum cleaner.
I think it looks more like a dinosaur head, but.
Okay. And what I want to try and do here is make a majority-minority district. I believe there is that population in here. The east boundary would be something like along the old Nogales Highway, which is and then Picture Rocks. I guess this Picture Rocks census place would be a boundary.
So that would be the western boundary?
Kind of the northwestern boundary.
Okay. So Picture Rocks is included or not included?
Not included. This was clear in my head when I was looking at the road map yesterday. So here are the notes I took, Mr. Desmond, and maybe this makes sense or maybe it doesn't. I can't picture it in my head quite as clearly as it was yesterday. So the east boundary with 11 would be the old Nogales Highway, and then we'd follow the Benson Highway to 22nd Street to Campbell to Grant. And then I-10 to the boundary of Marana.
So I'm sorry, 11 then includes, is more of a north-south district? Because 9 and 10 are both east-west districts, horizontal?
Well, I'm not really bound, let's move back out
Like, zoom out?
just a little bit. Okay, yeah, so 10 would be more east-west, 9 would be more east-west, and then there would be a majority-minority district in here that would become 3.
Okay.
And then 11,
Will that majority-minority include the Tohono O'odham?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Maybe you could think about that.
Okay.
The other thing that made some sense to me was to make, what's further west here? Does 3 go all the way out? You know, one thing I thought about was that it may make sense to make this district look more like the congressional district. But I didn't focus on that, so let's not.
So possibly going into Yuma then?
No, not 3. 3 is going to be right here. 3 is going to take in this west side of Tucson.
Okay.
And it's going to be, I believe there's a population there to create a majority-minority legislative district without including this. And that's what I'd like you to look at.
Okay.
And I'll look at the map again. I guess what I need to do is pull this up on my computer the way I had it yesterday and really look at those street names again to track my notes here, but I'll do that, and if I need to clarify, I will.
Okay. And then just thinking about the upcoming week, we will have a lot of time on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. It's possible that I might not be able to have, like, you know, the printout and like the completed thing done, but we could go into it with, you know, the rough outline of what you've gone here and actually do some of the moving the blocks around in the session, if that helps. I don't know how much actual drawing you guys want to do at this point when we're in meetings, but if we get it close and you have a few things you want to tweak, that's possible.
It's okay with me. I don't know the best balance. I guess we're all struggling to achieve the best balance of, given our time constraints, you know, having you sit here versus just hammering it out and then us working with you on it. That's it for, you know, that took me all day to figure that out.
Did anyone have other thoughts on the legislative maps they'd like to see for next time? Mr. Sturts?
Really, let's go back to Tucson for a second. I think Commissioner McNulty has some great insights to your approach. I'm looking forward to seeing those. The one thing that there are large employment blocks and large residential blocks that all relate to each other. There the Vail area, the Sahuarita area, and Marana all have large employment that use Interstate 10 and working. There's a large employment either at the Davis-Monthan Air Force Base and at the Raytheon plant. There are literally tens of thousands of people that live in those three residential areas that feed down to that. In contacts with residents in those areas, I've heard that they would love to have common representation because they relate to each other. I don't know how that works, but while you're considering what you just heard from Commissioner McNulty, I'd like you to potentially have that into consideration.
Okay, so that was Vail, Sahuarita, and which other area?
Marana, Sahuarita are both feeders, both residential communities feeding employment into some of the main areas of employment. And I think as we start to drill down into communities of interest, traffic corridors and employment tracks are also important.
Okay.
And I'm sure that there'll be many, many different iterations, but I'd really like to see what Commissioner McNulty had just outlined for you going east-west instead of north-south, and how the lingering line as it goes down through Littletown going down towards Vail, that truly is, it's more impactful going east-west south of River Road. So I think she's hit it right on the nose there.
Okay. We haven't really looked at this option too much. I could also show you some other areas of the state if you guys had questions on this. We had looked at that District 5 or 6, I think, on option 1. I can show you the same type of thing here. Follows a similar path by and large, I think, and I think that's a reflection of the grid and keeping Indian reservations whole. There wasn't too many places to go. But whatever you guys want to do. Are there other what-ifs to look at?
Were there any from Friday's meeting that still need to be done?
Yes, the ones with Commissioner Herrera looking
Okay.
at following the river district. So we're going to get together to work through some of those.
Okay.
Let me just check my notes, make sure that was it. I think that's it for right now.
Okay.
Madam
Did
Chair?
commissioners have any other input on these? Ms. McNulty? Okay.
Ready to go study more?
Madam Chair?
Mr. Herrera?
Yeah, if we can focus on option 1, version 5, what I'd like to do, if just quickly, or as quickly as you can, go through each of the districts and just give me the highlights, like which the bigger cities would contain within those districts.
Sure.
Just to give me an idea of, of what each district contains and the bordering districts. So you can either start go 1 to 2, 3, 4 in order, or whatever's convenient.
Okay.